Commandant Endra, a seasoned Xylax general, stood in the war room, surrounded by holographic displays showing the devastation across their territories. Her scales flickered with stress as she watched another planet fall, its defenses crumbling under the weight of Vargoth bombardments. Desperation etched lines across her face. She had fought in countless wars, but never had she felt the creeping edge of inevitable defeat like this. They had tried every tactic in their arsenal, but the Vargoth were adaptable, countering each new strategy with terrifying speed. "It's as if they can predict our every move," murmured Tarek, the young sealer tactician beside her. His large, reflective eyes betrayed the hopelessness many of the younger officers felt. "No matter how we reposition, they're one step ahead. They're toying with us, Commandant." Endra clenched her fists. She knew Tarek wasn't wrong. Reports came in daily, detailing the ruthlessness of the Vargoth's attacks. They struck without warning, bypassing planetary shields as if they were nothing more than illusions. Their forces were well coordinated, each division moving with a precision and brutality that made the coalition's attempts at resistance seem pitiful in comparison. Each battle cost more lives, and each defeat sapped what little morale they had left. Across the galaxy, entire civilizations were displaced, fleeing in overcrowded ships that became easy targets for the Vargoth raiders. The Allied leaders held crisis meetings that often ended in bitter arguments, voices raised as leaders of different species demanded impossible answers from one another. Yet, even as the leadership fractured, a common, unspoken truth began to solidify. They couldn't win this war alone. One leader finally voiced what everyone else feared to admit. "Earth," he said, his voice barely more than a whisper. The name lingered in the air, unfamiliar and strange. Humanity was new to the galactic scene, their technology and understanding still primitive by many standards. Yet stories had circulated of their tenacity, of their remarkable ability to innovate under pressure. Humans had yet to prove themselves on the interstellar stage, and there were whispers, too, of their unpredictability. But in the face of annihilation, even the most skeptical among them saw humanity as a possible answer. Ender remained silent as the decision was made to reach out to Earth. She was wary. Humans, she thought, were an unproven risk. But the Vargoth were closing in on one of their last strongholds, and with so little left to lose, she agreed. The transmission was sent with words both humble and urgent, a plea for aid that she never thought she'd make. It was days before they received a response. And then, unexpectedly, the message arrived, brief and to the point. "We're on our way." 2 weeks later, the humans arrived in their ships, which, by galactic standards, looked rugged and unrefined, built for durability rather than elegance. At first, Endra worried they would be overwhelmed. These were not the sleek fighters of her people, nor did they bear the sophisticated cloaking devices of the sealer fleets. But when the human soldiers disembarked, her doubts began to shift. The soldiers were disciplined and calm, carrying an air of confidence that none of her troops had shown in months. Their commanders, grizzled veterans, battle-scarred yet unshaken, gathered with the coalition leaders, their expressions unreadable but unwavering. But what caught Ender's eye most was the sight of creatures she could hardly comprehend, standing obediently beside the human troops. Large, muscular animals with fierce gazes, alert and disciplined, as if they understood the stakes as well as their human counterparts. "What are they?" Endra found herself asking aloud, almost in disbelief. A human commander, tall and steady, answered without missing a beat. "They're dogs. War dogs, specifically. Trained for combat, reconnaissance, and detection. They're as much soldiers as any one of us." Endra studied the animals, noticing the keen intelligence in their eyes, the precise obedience with which they followed commands. The coalition forces had relied on advanced technology and tactical programming, but nothing quite like this living, breathing creatures that seemed both fierce and loyal. The tension in the room began to shift. The human troops radiated a quiet confidence, a palpable sense of unity between soldiers and their dogs that Endra could feel. It was as though these humans and their dogs shared a bond beyond simple command. They were partners, a symbiotic team built on trust and discipline. For the first time in months, hope began to flicker in her heart. She turned to Tarek, who watched in equal awe and allowed herself a small, determined smile. "Perhaps," she murmured, "we may yet stand a chance." As the human soldiers and their dogs prepared to take their places on the front lines, a sense of renewed purpose surged through the coalition. These strange, untested allies from Earth had arrived. They had come, not with grand promises or assurances of victory, but with a quiet resolve and an understanding that spoke louder than any boast. They were here to fight, and perhaps, just perhaps, they would be enough. The Allied encampment buzzed with a cautious optimism. The atmosphere taut with anticipation as the human forces prepared to join the front. When the human transports touched down, they stirred a mixture of curiosity and disbelief among the alien soldiers. These new allies didn't arrive with imposing, gleaming machinery or intricate suits like the high-tech armor of the Xylax or Sealer. Instead, the humans disembarked in worn yet functional armor, marked with scuffs and dents that spoke of hard-earned experience. And by their side, bounding down the ramps with purpose and poise, were the dogs. The alien soldiers stared in bewilderment at the four-legged animals weaving calmly through the human troops. Some thought them mere mascots, perhaps even a human ritual they didn't understand. But the dogs moved with a calculated precision, each one paired with a handler who seemed to communicate with the animal through subtle gestures and expressions. For a moment, there was an almost amused murmur among the alien troops until they saw the dogs in action. In a demonstration designed to prove their worth, the dogs went through their paces, showcasing their remarkable skills. Under a handler's silent commands, a sleek, black dog named Ghost darted forward, nose to the ground, sniffing out hidden enemy explosives planted in a mock terrain. Within seconds, he pinpointed a location with a low growl, alerting the humans who quickly marked it. Alien commanders observed transfixed as the humans and their dogs moved seamlessly together, anticipating each other's moves, each handler trusting his dog to protect him and detect dangers invisible to human senses. Commandant Endra couldn't take her eyes off them. Beside her, Tarek was equally captivated, especially when the humans explained the dog's various roles. Some were scouts, able to detect camouflaged enemies even the Xylax sensors failed to catch. Others specialized in retrieval and even combat, trained to defend their handlers with a tenacity that left even the most seasoned alien soldier speechless. Endra approached Captain Reynolds, the human officer leading the unit. She was cautious, her eyes flicking between him and the German shepherd that sat dutifully by his side, its intense gaze fixed on her as though assessing her intentions. "They're remarkable creatures," Ender said, her voice holding a trace of awe. "But why do you rely on them? Your technology must be advanced enough to handle reconnaissance and detection." Reynolds knelt beside his dog, scratching the shepherd's head with obvious affection. "Because they're more than just sensors or weapons," he replied, his voice steady. "They're our partners. They're built for this, loyal, sharp, able to detect what even our best tech can't. And, Commandant, they have one advantage nothing else has. Instincts." He nodded to his dog, and as if understanding the command, the shepherd stood and stepped forward, eyes locked on Endra, holding her gaze with an intensity that made her feel strangely vulnerable. The dog's presence was fierce, almost protective, and Endra found herself taking a step back despite herself. "Instincts," she repeated, regaining her composure. "Yes," Reynolds replied with a calm confidence. "The kind that keeps us alive when the odds are against us." Tarek couldn't resist a question, his curiosity overcoming his initial skepticism. "Can they really sense the Vargoth?" he asked, his voice tinged with both fascination and disbelief. "Their stealth technology is like nothing we've seen. Not even our sensors can fully detect them until it's too late." Reynolds' expression hardened. "The Vargoth aren't the first to rely on stealth. Our dogs have been trained to track enemies who don't want to be found, who rely on blending in, hiding their scents, masking their presence. But dogs, they can smell fear. They can hear the faintest shifts, see movements we can't. They'll be our eyes and ears on the ground. As the demonstrations continued, the Allied troops began to view the dogs as more than mere animals. Ghost, Scout, Shadow, and the other dogs performed tirelessly, moving in perfect sync with their handlers. With every display of their skill, the Allies' doubts melted away, replaced by a deep respect for these strange creatures and the humans who commanded them. One alien officer approached his own commander, his voice a low murmur. "Perhaps," he admitted, "we underestimated the humans and their companions." Finally, as the demonstrations concluded, Reynolds gathered his team, dogs at attention beside their handlers. He addressed the assembled alien leaders with a tone of unwavering resolve. "We didn't come here to observe or advise from a distance," he said. "We came here to fight. And our dogs, they're not just here for show. They'll be on the front lines with us, tracking, warning, and if necessary, fighting. The Vargoth might have tech, but they don't know loyalty like this. They don't know what it's like to trust something other than a machine." A murmur rippled through the ranks of alien soldiers as they absorbed his words. Some looked at the dogs with newfound respect, realizing the strength of the bond between humans and their canine partners. This partnership, forged through shared hardship and an unspoken loyalty, was something none of the other species could fully understand. Ender stepped forward, her gaze fierce. "Then let's see what you and your allies can do, Captain. We'll hold nothing back, and I expect nothing less from you." Reynolds gave a firm nod. "We wouldn't have it any other way." The air in the encampment was charged with anticipation as the humans and their dogs prepared to deploy. The alien soldiers, watching these strange new allies, couldn't shake the feeling that they had just glimpsed a hidden strength, one that the Vargoth would soon come to fear. With quiet determination, the humans and their loyal dogs moved toward the battlefield, and the Allies found themselves holding on to a new, fervent hope that maybe, with these unexpected warriors by their side, they had a fighting chance after all. The battlefield was a storm of chaos and shifting terrain, a land of shadows where the Vargoth used their cloaking technology to blend into every crevice, making themselves nearly invisible to alien eyes. The Allied forces had suffered crushing defeats here before, overwhelmed by the Vargoth's relentless ambushes. But this time, as they advanced with their new human allies and the army dogs, a tense, unfamiliar confidence filled the air. Captain Reynolds led the charge, his team moving with measured precision. At his side was his loyal German shepherd, Bravo, ears perked, muscles taut, and eyes fixed ahead. The coalition troops watched in awe as the humans and dogs fanned out across the ravaged landscape. Unlike any tactic they had seen before, each soldier and dog pair moved as a single unit, their actions fluid and instinctive. The dogs' heightened senses, sight, smell, and hearing, created an invisible net that began to disrupt the Vargoth's most prized advantage: stealth. "Bravo, search," Reynolds commanded in a low voice. Bravo's head lowered, nose to the ground as he moved with a quiet, lethal focus. Moments later, he paused, barking sharply and pointing his snout toward a cluster of rocks. The signal was clear: enemy presence detected. Without hesitation, the soldiers took their positions, weapons ready. Within seconds, the Vargoth emerged from their cloaked positions, caught off guard by the dog's uncanny ability to track them. A brief, intense skirmish erupted, but the coalition, now with an edge they had never before possessed, repelled the attackers. Bravo's alert had given them precious seconds to prepare, saving dozens of lives. Word spread quickly among the ranks as other dog teams began to identify ambushes and detect traps. The Vargoth, who once prowled the battlefield with impunity, now found themselves exposed and on the defensive. The once feared invisible warriors were reduced to desperate, visible prey, their advantage slipping away with every encounter. In one sector, Tarek led a squad alongside a human named Sergeant Carter and his dog, Shadow. The large, jet-black dog was a quiet, imposing presence, his gaze as sharp as any weapon. Shadow crouched low, scanning the area with focused intensity. With a silent signal from Carter, Shadow darted forward, his ears twitching as he moved swiftly across a field littered with debris. He halted, nose twitching at the air, then let out a low, warning growl. "Trap detected," Carter whispered. Shadow had uncovered a Vargoth minefield, an area the Coalition troops would have unwittingly crossed. Tarek felt a surge of gratitude and relief as he ordered his squad to carefully bypass the hazard, sparing them from what would have been a devastating loss. The Coalition commanders watched in astonishment as, one by one, the humans and their dogs dismantled the Vargoth defenses. What had once been a battlefield, where the Vargoth roamed freely, had now turned into hostile ground for them. The dogs tracked their movements relentlessly, reducing the once feared warriors to floundering fugitives. It was as though a new wave of life had surged into the Coalition troops, fueled by the humans' resolve and their dogs' keen instincts. Endra, observing from her command post, could hardly believe the reports coming in. "The Vargoth, they're retreating?" she murmured, almost unable to accept that this seemingly unstoppable enemy was finally faltering. "Yes, Commandant," one of her officers replied with a hint of awe. "The human strategy is effective beyond any prediction. Their dogs anticipate the Vargoth's positions with remarkable accuracy, but the Vargoth were not so easily subdued. Sensing their hold slipping, they launched a desperate counterattack, pouring all their remaining forces into a final assault. Their massive war machines and infantry units advanced, aiming to crush the Coalition's newfound hope. As the ground shook with the force of the Vargoth advance, Reynolds and his team braced for the storm. Amidst the chaos, Bravo and the other dogs became an unbreakable line of defense, running messages between squads, alerting troops to incoming attacks, and even joining in the fray when the fighting grew fierce. Bravo tackled a Vargoth soldier who had slipped past the lines, snarling and holding his ground until Reynolds arrived to take the enemy down. Shadow, with Carter at his side, guarded a critical choke point, his fierce barks rallying the troops and driving back wave after wave of Vargoth infantry. The Vargoth tried to adapt, using new cloaking frequencies and stealth tactics, but the dogs' natural senses proved impossible to thwart. Time and again, the Vargoth's best-laid plans unraveled in the face of these fearless animals and their human partners. The Coalition forces, emboldened by their unexpected advantage, pressed forward, countering the Vargoth at every turn. For the first time, they saw fear in the enemy's eyes, a desperation that mirrored their own from so many battles before. Now! It was the Vargoth who struggled to regroup, their confidence shattered. Reynolds issued a final command to his team, "Push them back. This is our chance to break their line for good." With Bravo at his side, he led the charge, his soldiers and their dogs surging forward with a fierce determination. The dogs detected hidden Vargoth units, sniffed out concealed traps, and protected their handlers with an unwavering loyalty that inspired all who fought beside them. They were relentless, their courage unbreakable even as the Vargoth's final assault reached its peak. As the battle wore on, the Vargoth forces began to fracture, their cohesion splintering under the unyielding assault of the humans and their canine allies. Coalition soldiers who had once fought with despair now surged with new hope, rallying around the humans and their dogs as they pressed the Vargoth back toward the edge of the battlefield. Finally, the enemy lines broke. The Vargoth, once feared as the galaxy's most ruthless predators, were retreating, their forces in disarray, their morale shattered. Cheers erupted among the Coalition ranks as they watched their enemy flee. The humans and their dogs had done what seemed impossible. They had turned the tide. Captain Reynolds glanced down at Bravo, the loyal dog panting at his side, and patted his head with pride. "Good job, boy," he murmured. Bravo's tail wagged once, just as he lifted his head to watch the retreating Vargoth with fierce, unwavering eyes. The battle was won, but everyone knew the war was far from over. As Endra looked on, admiration mingled with relief. These humans and their dogs, she realized, were more than allies. They were the hope the coalition had been waiting for. The battlefield lay quiet under a smoldering sky, a stark contrast to the fierce clash that had raged only hours before. The Vargoth had fled, leaving behind shattered remnants of their once feared war machines and hastily abandoned weapons. Coalition troops moved carefully through the wreckage, tending to the wounded and gathering supplies. But there was a palpable shift in the air, a renewed hope, a sense that they had finally gained an upper hand against their brutal enemy. Captain Reynolds walked with Bravo at his side, the loyal dog still alert despite the exhaustion visible in his every step. Around them, coalition soldiers paused to nod or offer murmurs of gratitude. These alien warriors, once skeptical of the humans and their army dogs, now looked at them with admiration and even awe. Bravo's head held high. His dark eyes scanned the surroundings with an unbreakable focus, and the soldiers who had witnessed his bravery firsthand were quick to step aside, a sign of their newfound respect. Commandant Endra approached Reynolds, her gaze softening as she regarded him and his loyal companion. "You saved many lives today, Captain," she said, her voice carrying both gratitude and a trace of wonder. "Your dogs, your soldiers, they fought with a ferocity and courage that I've rarely seen. You've given us hope that perhaps we can win this war after all." Reynolds gave a humble nod, glancing down at Bravo. "We came here to fight for more than just survival. Humanity has faced extinction before, and we've learned that strength doesn't always come from sheer firepower. Sometimes it's about loyalty, intuition, and the willingness to fight for those at your side." Endra's expression grew thoughtful. "Your instincts and partnership with these animals have reshaped our strategy. I underestimated the bond between humans and their dogs. I think we all did." As the coalition leaders gathered to debrief, tales of the humans' exploits spread through the ranks. Soldiers spoke in reverent tones of how the dogs had saved them from hidden traps and ambushes, how they had unerringly detected cloaked enemies, how they had fought with a fierce determination that seemed to transcend understanding. The humans and their dogs had turned the tide of battle, transforming the coalition's despair into something it hadn't felt in a long time: confidence. Tarek, who had once been skeptical of the humans' presence, now stood beside Sergeant Carter, his respect for the human soldier and his dog, Shadow, evident in his eyes. "Shadow saved my entire unit today," he admitted, his voice filled with gratitude. "If not for him, we would have walked straight into the Vargatha's ambush." Carter smiled, resting a hand on Shadow's head. "He's saved my life more times than I can count," he replied quietly. "Dogs like Shadow aren't just companions. They're warriors. They fight for us, alongside us, and they never back down." As the coalition command convened, Endra addressed the assembled leaders, her voice carrying a newfound determination. "We have witnessed humanity's strength today, a strength that goes beyond mere weapons or numbers. The humans and their canine allies have shown us a path forward, a way to outmaneuver the Vargoth where brute force alone has failed." She turned to Reynolds, her gaze resolute. "Captain, we want your teams and their dogs to lead a new task force. You've proven that you have the skills and instincts necessary to confront the Vargatha strategies. Together, we can build a coalition capable of not just defending, but striking back." Reynolds looked around at his soldiers, their weary faces brightening at the acknowledgement of their efforts. Bravo stood beside him, his quiet, steadfast presence a reminder of the loyalty and bravery that had earned the coalition's respect. "We're ready to stand with you, Commandant," he replied, his voice strong and unwavering. "We didn't come here to stand on the sidelines. This is our fight, too." The coalition's decision was swift. Humans and their dogs would be integrated into special reconnaissance and frontline units, their skills used to tip the balance in favor of the coalition forces. Where once the Vargatha's stealth and cunning had spelled certain defeat, now the humans and their dogs would lead the way, breaking through their defenses and exposing their tactics. In the days that followed, a new strategy emerged. Coalition troops trained alongside the human units, learning to trust the dogs' instincts and move in harmony with their human partners. The dogs themselves became an inspiration to the coalition soldiers, symbols of courage, loyalty, and resilience. Stories of Bravo, Shadow, and the others spread quickly, and each dog earned a reputation among the coalition troops, their names spoken with reverence and respect. On the eve of their next mission, Reynolds and Ender stood together, watching as their soldiers prepared. The sky was dark, filled with stars and the promise of battles yet to come. "I never thought," Ender began, "that a war would be won by creatures so small and at first glance so unassuming. But these dogs, they're remarkable. I've come to believe that they're not just warriors. They're the heart of your strength." Reynolds nodded, his gaze drifting to Bravo, who lay at his feet, resting but ever vigilant. "We don't see them as tools or weapons. They're family. They fight with us because they believe in us, and we in them. That's something the Vargoth will never understand." Endera extended her hand, a rare gesture among her people, but one that held profound respect. "Then let's show the Vargoth what it means to stand together, not just as soldiers, but as a united force." Reynolds took her hand, sealing their alliance. As they prepared to face the Vargoth once more, there was a new sense of unity, a shared understanding that went beyond words or species. They were ready, not as separate factions, but as a single force bound by loyalty, resilience, and a shared purpose. And as Bravo rose beside his handler, eyes glinting in the dim light, Reynolds knew that, no matter what lay ahead, they had already won a victory that went far beyond the battlefield. Together, they were crafted to withstand anything, even the darkest trials the galaxy could throw their way.